Smoke rises over a city that refuses to fall. The Tagus runs red as crusader ships crowd the horizon. A king stands on the hill, his army starving, his fate hanging by a thread. He's outnumbered, out of time, yet moments away from seizing immortality. This is not just a siege, it's the birth of a nation. In the middle of the 12th century, the Iberian Peninsula was a broken land, a patchwork of rival faiths and restless kings. For decades, Christians and Muslims clashed across its plains, each believing God stood on their side. Among them rose a man who saw not just battles to win, but a kingdom to forge. Afonso I of Portugal. He was no chosen heir. He fought his way to the throne, overthrowing his own mother, defeating the Moors, and daring to crown himself king. But kingship without conquest is just a title. His borders were fragile, his enemies relentless. To the south lay Lisbon, a fortress of stone and faith, the key to Portugal's survival. Yet Afonso's forces were too few, his resources too thin. The city seemed untouchable, until fate intervened. A violent storm drove 200 crusader ships off course, casting them onto Portugal's shores. To most rulers, it was chaos. To Afonso, it was providence. He rode to meet these strangers, Flemish, English, German, French, men bound not by nation, but by faith and greed. He offered them a simple bargain. Help him take Lisbon, and the spoils were theirs. Oaths were sworn, hostages exchanged. And in that moment, a chance encounter became a coalition of destiny. As the summer sun rose over the river Tagus, a new army gathered, 20,000 strong. The siege of Lisbon had begun. What followed would test every law of war, every code of faith, and the very soul of the man called the Conqueror. In the middle of the 12th century, the Iberian Peninsula was a fractured land, a centuries-old battleground between Christian kingdoms in the north and Muslim powers in the south. This was the era of the Reconquista, and on this chessboard of war and ambition, one man was about to make a move that would forge a nation. His name was Afonso I, and he would be known to history as the Conqueror. Afonso's story begins with a bold declaration. After seizing power from his own mother and winning a decisive victory against the Moors at the Battle of Urique, he declared himself the first king of Portugal in 1139. But a king needs a kingdom, and his was small, fragile, and threatened on all sides. His ultimate goal? To expand south, secure his borders, and earn the legitimacy his new crown so desperately needed. His gaze was fixed on the river Tagus and the great prize that sat on its banks, the wealthy, fortified city of Lisbon. But taking it was a task beyond his means. He needed an advantage, a twist of fate, and in 1147, the winds of history blew one right to his doorstep. That year, Pope Eugene III extended the Second Crusade to Iberia, turning the Reconquista into a holy war on par with the fight for Jerusalem. As if by divine intervention, a massive crusader fleet, battered by storms on its way to the Holy Land, was forced to seek shelter in the Portuguese city of Porto. This fleet was a motley collection of up to 200 ships, carrying thousands of warriors, Flemings, Germans, English, Scots, and French, all united by faith but lacking a single commander. Where others might see chaos, Afonso saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He immediately rode to meet them. This was a masterclass in medieval diplomacy. He wasn't dealing with a king or a general, but with a loose coalition of captains. To win them over, he made a simple, brutal, and irresistible offer. Help him take Lisbon, and they could have all the plunder and ransom money they could carry. It was an offer that spoke directly to their motivations. Not everyone was convinced. The English, remembering a failed attempt on Lisbon just a few years earlier, were hesitant. But the persuasive arguments of their leader, Hervé de Glanville, won them over. Oaths were sworn, hostages exchanged, and a solemn pact was sealed. A chance storm had just been forged into a powerful, focused military alliance. A crusader fleet, bound for the east, was now turning south, its full might aimed squarely at Afonso's prize. The city of Lisbon, known then as Al-Ushbuna, was a formidable fortress. Its strong walls, the Cercamura, enclosed a garrison of around 15,000 battle-hardened Almoravid soldiers. The Allied forces quickly overran the surrounding countryside, cutting the city off from any hope of relief. For 4 long months, the siege ground on. It was a brutal war of attrition, of starvation, and relentless assault. The decisive factor, the one thing Afonso's army lacked, was the Crusaders' engineering prowess. They constructed massive siege towers, lumbering wooden beasts that could deliver soldiers directly onto the battlements. The defenders fought back fiercely, raining fire and projectiles down on the attackers. One contemporary account tells of 7 young men from Ipswich who courageously defended a tower for 2 days and a night under constant attack. But the pressure was relentless. The war machines were a threat the city simply could not counter. Faced with starvation inside and the inevitable breach of their walls from outside, the rulers of Lisbon finally agreed to surrender on October 21st. The Christian forces marched into the city 4 days later. The military objective was achieved. But for Afonso, the victory immediately unleashed a new crisis, a crisis of command. The terms of surrender were supposed to protect the lives and property of the city's inhabitants. Those terms were violated almost immediately. The chroniclers of the time are clear. The Flemish and German crusaders, driven by greed and a brutal total war mentality, broke ranks. They rampaged through the streets, plundering and killing. In a tragic illustration of the cultural chasm between the allies, they even murdered the city's elderly Mozara bishop, a local Christian leader, killed by foreign crusaders who either mistook him for a Muslim or simply didn't care. Yet this chaos was not universal. The same accounts praise the discipline of the English and Norman forces who remained quietly in their assigned position, preferring to stay their hands from looting. Amidst this violence and breakdown of control, Afonso thus demonstrated the foresight of a true nation-builder. He wasn't just a conqueror, he was a statesman. He stopped the slaughter and implemented a pragmatic policy. While the Crusaders saw enemies to be annihilated, Afonso saw a city to be governed. He allowed the remaining Muslim population to settle in a specific quarter outside the old walls, an area that would become known as the Muraria. He was already thinking about the long-term stability and integration of his new multicultural kingdom. The conquest of Lisbon was the single most important event in the founding of Portugal. It was more than just a battle. It was the moment a fledgling kingdom became a viable, expanding power. The victory secured Afonso's southern flank, anchored his border on the defensible line of the river Tagus, and effectively doubled the size of his realm. It was the irreversible turning point in the Portuguese Reconquista. From this strategic hub, the rest of the country would be secured. Afonso began repopulating the city with his own people and even convinced some of the Crusaders to stay. One of them, an Englishman named Gilbert of Hastings, became the new Bishop of Lisbon, marking the beginning of the historic Anglo-Portuguese alliance, the oldest in the world. Lisbon's port and strategic location ensured its rapid growth, and a century later, it would officially become the capital of the kingdom. The victory solidified Afonso's legacy as O Fundador, the founder. The story of the siege became a powerful founding narrative for the new nation, a tale of divine favor, strategic genius, and heroic determination. Through a masterful blend of military resolve and diplomatic opportunism, Afonso I seized a fleeting moment in history and used it to lay the permanent foundations of Portugal. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this piece of history as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of the strategies that shaped our world. See you next time. The visuals within this presentation are crafted to enrich your understanding, serving as artistic interpretations and contextual aids rather than direct factual representations. Their purpose is to illuminate the narrative and deepen your engagement with the historical backdrop. Join our growing community of history enthusiasts Hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support keeps history alive.